Hey guys, Zomfox here, and today we're going to be talking about the 2022 USFL MVP winner KaVontae Turpin, who has just made the 2023 NFL Pro Bowl roster. KaVontae Turpin was an outstanding player in the USFL, got us a shot in the NFL, and has made the most of it as being on the Pro Bowl roster. This is the first Pro Bowl games, as they're calling it, since the actual Pro Bowl game is now a flag football game. But as for Turpin himself, he is the return specialist starter. For those who don't know, there is no punt returner and kick returner. It is simply put just a return specialist on the Pro Bowl roster, and he is the NFC Pro Bowl return specialist starter. They only name, at least as of now, one returner until they get to alternates and stuff, so he was the guy picked. He won out of everyone else in terms of voting, as this is voted by players, coaches, and fans. So it is definitely cool to see the USFL make the roster. As for his stats overall, in terms of non-returning stats, just to mention quickly, he's only rushed a couple times for 17 yards and received one pass for 9 yards. But what he has done is in the return game. He has 261 yards punt returning for 22 returns, as well as an 11.9 yard per return, which for punt returns is pretty decent. And as for kick return, he's averaging 23.7 return yards, which is okay. But overall, he does have 426 yards in that from 18 returns. In terms of where he ranks, his longest punt return is 4th in the league. His longest kick return is 8th in the league. His yards per punt return is actually 4th in the league, and his yards per kick return is 7th. His kick and punt return total, like the amount, is 7th, and his punt return yards is 8th, and his kick and punt return yards is 7th. Those are across the whole league. Now, before we, keep giving him his flowers, you have to discuss whether or not he fully deserved it. There are two guys that really might feel they got snubbed. The first one is Kenny Nwangwu. If you guys don't know, this was the guy that had that return against the Patriots on the Thanksgiving game. It was like the first return touchdown against Bill Belichick in like almost 10 years. Overall, his season has been excellent on the kick return side. He has not done any punt returns. He is literally a kick return specialist. He followed up last year's 11 games where he had 2 kick return touchdowns in a very solid year with this year, where he is currently leading the entire league in the amount of kick returns, the yards in his kick return, his average for yards for return, kick return, and touchdowns at 1. This year he's having an outstanding year returning the ball, but the only argument against him is the punt return, which we'll get to in a second. Now, the other guy that definitely could feel slighted is Ray McCloud of the 49ers. He's been a return specialist pretty much his whole career, but this year he has pretty much followed up another great year last year by being outstanding. In the 14 games he's played this year, he has 322 punt return yards on 29 returns for an 11.1 average. In terms of kick returns, on 22 returns, he has 495 yards and is averaging 22.5. Now, his all-purpose yards are, over 1,000. That's due to the fact that he also has a good amount of receiving yards. But his return stats are pretty solid themselves. When you compare all three of them together is where you definitely see why it's pretty close. In terms of one player specialty, Nwangwu definitely is the best at his specialty. As in kick return yards, he has over 750 at 779, which far exceeds anyone else as he's leading the entire league in returns, yards, and yards per return. As if you lead the league in returns, you should lead the league in return yards. But when you're also leading in yards per return, you're still having an incredible year, and that shows that even though you're getting a ton of returns, you're making the most of them. So definitely some of you may feel he's been slighted. But this is return specialist. And I do understand if the voters that were, the coaches and players don't want to vote someone in who only does half the return game. That's where we go to McCloud versus Turpin. In terms of receiving or punt return yards, McCloud wins. But in terms of average, he loses. And that's where you also have to ask the question of overall returns versus average. Yes, McCloud has more yards, but he is doing it in less efficiency. Then in terms of kick returns between the two of them, the same story comes there. McCloud has returned more kicks for more yards, but his average is a bit less than Turpin as well. And so when you add those in, it makes more sense why Turpin gets it. So if you want an objective viewpoint of it, if you want it to be whoever has the best specialty, it's Nwangwu. But if you're talking about as an actual returner, Turpin pretty much beats out these other two guys due to efficiency, averaging more yards a return on both kick and punt return. He has had a couple fumbles, which you could count against him as well. But overall, he definitely deserves to be a Pro Bowler. I feel as alternates, he would definitely still be probably the alternate. As personally, I would pick McLeod over Nwangwu, though I imagine Nwangwu might still end up getting it, but we'll see for that. Now, as for Turpin, it's a great honor for him, and it helps the USFL in their quest against the XFL, just because it's a USFL player getting to the Pro Bowl, which didn't happen for the XFL and did happen for the AAF, but they were already shut down as Younghoe Koo made it. But granted, the counter argument is that Taylor Heineke was in the XFL and he is still a starting quarterback in the league. But the USFL can definitely make use of this as a way to have other players come into the league and say, hey, we have a guy that made the NFL Pro Bowl that came from us. So with that, we'll see. Overall, this has been ZomFox. If you enjoy this content and want to be notified as soon as I upload any videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. And as always, have a great night.